Thank you everybody for joining us live on Facebook. My name is Pratima Pandey. I am the Director for the Office of Women's Policy, County of Santa Clara. We're part of the Division of Equity and Social Justice. And today we are honored that you have decided to join us on a panel discussion on the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women. Please give me a minute or so as we allow more participants to log in, and we will be ready to begin. Welcome everybody, and thank you for being with us today. Good evening, my name is Pratima Pandey. I'm the Director for the Office of Women's Policy, County of Santa Clara, Division of Equity and Social Justice. We are honored that you decided to join us today for our inaugural panel discussion on missing and murdered Indigenous women. I want to begin by welcoming a champion from our Board of Supervisors, who was the reason that we were able to, for the first time in the County of Santa Clara in 2019, raise awareness about the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women in the County of Santa Clara. Supervisor Susan Ellenberg represents District 4 in the County of Santa Clara, and she was elected in 2019 and currently serves on our Public Safety and Justice Committee, as well as the Health and Hospitals Committee. She's also the chair of the First 5 Santa Clara County and sits on the boards of Joint Ventures Silicon Valley and Silicon Valley Clean Energy. That's what I get from her bio. Here's what I want to share about Supervisor Ellenberg. She's been a tireless champion on women's issues, and as recently as 2018, was serving as a commissioner on the Commission on the Status of Women for the County of Santa Clara. And in 2018 November, she was one of 4 women from our commission elected to the Board of Supervisors. We're very honored that Supervisor Ellenberg is here to welcome us, and I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Ellenberg.
Thank you so much, Pratima. I appreciate the introduction and want to thank all of the members of the Office of Women's Policy for inviting me to participate in this virtual panel tonight. I really am appreciative of this office for raising the issue with me, and I'm humbled to help raise its visibility within our county as well as for myself. This is a topic about which I have much to learn. At the May 5th Board of Supervisors meeting, I presented a proclamation to recognize May as Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Awareness Month for a second year, but I understand that a yearly proclamation is hardly sufficient. I am very grateful for the panelists, activists, and Indigenous women everywhere who continue to fight for recognition and for justice. The information I'm about to share is hard to hear and frankly, hard to have read and learned about, but I know that this must be shared, heard, and felt in order to acknowledge a global crisis harming Indigenous women. According to the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center, during the period of 1979 through 1992, homicide was the 3rd leading cause of death of Indigenous girls and women aged 15 to 34. 75% of them were killed by family members or acquaintances. In 2005, the movement for safety of Native women resulted in the inclusion of the Safety for Indian Women title within the Violence Against Women Act. A study released by the U.S. Department of Justice found that in some tribal communities, American Indian women face murder rates that are more than 10 times the national average. In 2018, 5,712 missing and murdered Indigenous cases were reported in the Urban Indian Health Institute survey. California has a larger population of American Indians than any other state in the country. May 7th, 2019 was the first time the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors recognized May as honoring missing and murdered Indigenous women, and the proclamation was presented at the Indigenous Women Are Sacred Red Dress exhibit organized in the county building by the Red Earth Women's Society, a local group of Indigenous women in partnership with the Office of Women's Policy. Because of the general isolation and lack of resources in this community, the current shelter-in-place order due to COVID-19 crisis is exacerbating the danger for Native women living in abusive homes, as well as those being exploited by traffickers. In closing, while we are battling this pandemic, we need to continue to shed light on forgotten populations, on the need to elevate their stories, and to remember that in our own communities, there are people who have never had the opportunity to share the injustice that silently attacks their loved ones. I sit with you this evening in humility, ready to hear your stories and to learn how I can be of help in a meaningful way. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. That was an inelegant close, but I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed by the environment and what's to come. So once again, thank you all very much for including me this evening.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Ellenberg. Yes, it's a somber beginning. At the same time, difficult conversations are conversations we need to have, because often it is important to do what's right and not what's easy. So I appreciate you for leading us. If anyone has questions for Supervisor Ellenberg, please feel free to email her during this event and even afterwards. She's at supervisor.ellenberg@bos.sccgov.org, or find out more about her at supervisorellenberg.com. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Rosanna Alvarez. Thank you.
And as all things, we start off this conversation acknowledging so many things. Again, I ask that we pause to acknowledge our relationship with the land and the Indigenous peoples, past and present. Although we're in a global virtual space, we know that many of our governments have carried out genocide, ethnic cleansing, and forced removal against Indigenous peoples as a way to acquire land. Broken promises, centuries of colonial theft and violence, and still this remains Indigenous land. It will always be Indigenous land. In Santa Clara County, let us take a moment to reflect on how we will continue to honor the Ohlone and Muwekma Ohlone people beyond this spoken acknowledgement. Learn the current efforts and leadership of our Indigenous communities, like the work of the Amamutsin tribal band working to protect sacred lands, who aim to exemplify integrity, care for the land, compassion for life. Those who lead by example so that our children and our children's children and their children can learn these lessons and that respect. I invite you to plant your feet on the ground from the comfort of your living room, from your backyards, wherever you might find yourself in this moment, and take some time to acknowledge that Indigenous peoples of the space you currently occupy. And if you don't know, take some time beyond this webinar to educate yourself and your relationship to their legacy and to the Indigenous peoples who currently exist alongside you in the present in your everyday lives. Let us remember their connection to this region and give thanks for the opportunity to live, work, learn, and pray Indigenous traditional homelands. Let us allow ourselves to take a moment beyond the time here to pay respect to elders in the community and to all Indigenous people past and present. In this precise moment, I want to turn to the women in this space to acknowledge their communities in order to bring them into this virtual space with us. So for those of you at home, feel free to welcome your communities in the comments. And I'm going to start off by turning it over to Marissa so that she can do the same, and then we'll continue with each one of the panelists. So Marissa, if you wouldn't mind going ahead and calling in your Indigenous communities that you stand with and represent.
Absolutely. I am located here in Seattle, and I want to honor the First Peoples of the Seattle region, the Coast Salish tribes, including the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Puyallup, and many, many others. They have been so welcoming and have opened their hearts to myself and others from across Turtle Island. They are the water protectors, the land protectors, and the protectors of the sacred here in this space. And I am honored to be a member of their community and a part of and walking alongside them during this fight for justice.
Thank you. Tish, would you like to welcome and honor Indigenous peoples you represent, stand with, and the land that you currently are occupying.
Of course, thank you. This is Trish Martinez. I'm located in San Diego, California. I am a citizen of the Mesa Grande Band of Mission Indian. Also, we are noted as the Kumeyaay. So who I bring along with me every day and always within my travels and within my talks is my grandmother, for she was my first teacher and always will be. So I give her great honor, and also to my grandfather, who was the last Indian agent who patrolled the security over our reservation. So for them, I am very greatly honored to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly, would you like to call in your communities, the land that you currently are in and representing?
Thank you. My name is Kelly Bueno Gamboa. I'm a California native. My maternal lineage comes from Tule River. My paternal lineage comes from Mescalero, New Mexico, Apache. I want to mention and honor my relatives, the Muecma Ohlone, of course, also the Osan Nation of Monterey Bay, my distant relatives, the Ama Mutsun. And I'm here representing my town, my hometown, my community here. And I'm part of the Red Earth Women's Society, a really diverse group of Native women that come together in a good way for healing and all kinds of stuff that we do together for our community. And I'm really grateful to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Edith, I welcome you to do the same.
So Machukchus Kaniyo Oyashe, Edith Williams. So in my language, I said, hello, my name's Edith Williams, introducing myself. I'm from Northern California. My tribes are Miwok. From Wilton Rancheria, I'm an enrolled member. Wailaki, Wintu, Concow, and Washashoni. And I just want to welcome everybody and give the prayers out to all the families who need them right now.
Thank you so much for calling in your communities and the land that we get to form a relationship with. For the rest of us, let us remember that Indigenous peoples are not relics of the past. We are still here, and we continue to demonstrate our talents and gifts amidst a backdrop of ongoing colonialism and oppression. We are worth celebrating. Our women deserve justice. Our children are worth nurturing, and our peoples have a right to joy, wholeness, and dignity. And indeed, I believe that is a huge part of the reason why we are here having this conversation, as difficult as it may be, to remind us of the balance with which that work is approached, right? So during this webinar, we're going to be hearing from these women that you just met by way of this land acknowledgement. But before we do that, I just want to take a quick few seconds to hold some silence, because sometimes what happens is we move and we move and we move and we cross things off of our list and we forget to anchor ourselves in a space and really give those words some credence. So I invite you all to take a quick 10 seconds, if you will, to just ground yourself in the legacy of the rich traditions of what is represented in the land and by the land and for the land. Thank you all so much. I'm going to move the conversation along, and you might hear some of that joy going on in the background. I can't control the joy that's happening in the backyards of every space that we are currently occupying. We are here talking about some very heavy issues, some necessary work. We're going to hear a range of different phrases that we might not all be familiar with. And so I encourage you all to reach out and learn more, right? We have a wealth of information available to us at our fingertips, quite frankly. We're going to be hearing from each of the voices who have introduced themselves and their communities briefly. I'm going to segue into a deeper introduction of sorts, and I by no means am going to do them any justice by taking a snippet of their bio here, just for us to get a sense of the work that they've done. I'm honored again to share space with each and every one of you. humor me as I read through a quick snippet of each of your bios. And what I'm going to do is break it up because I love to hear people as they are in their own voice. And so I'll start off with each of the panelists, quick bio, and then I'll invite you to tell us who you are in your own words and a little bit about the work you do. Beginning with Kelly Gamboa, who is local, actively involved in the struggle to elevate Native women's voices here in San Jose and the surrounding Bay Area. She is the co-founder of the Red Earth Women's Society, an alliance of Indigenous women dedicated to raising awareness on the injustices affecting Native communities. She is outspoken on these issues for the long haul. So Kelly, if I can invite you to just say a few words about you and your work by way of this introduction.
Thank you, Rosanna. Again, I'm honored to be part of this panel. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a grandmother, a mother, a daughter, a sister. I raised my family here. I was raised here in San Jose, California. The reason I do this work is because of, in 1999, Marlene Marie Bueno, my niece, my brother's daughter, went missing and was later found murdered. And of course, it impacted our family in a really hard way. She was 17 years old when she was murdered. And one thing that always stuck in my mind, besides the pain and grief of losing, somebody so important, was that during the time, that all that happened to her and to us, I saw that she had basically 15 minutes of fame in the media. After that, they just kind of rolled right over the whole thing. There was a really long, drawn-out trial and all that stuff, but nobody cared. Nobody cared but us. My community cared. My family cared. But the greater community, the media could care less. Another non-Indigenous murder had happened. It was sensational all over the news. She was murdered. She went missing and was murdered, found murdered, a couple weeks later. Same thing as my niece, but I really feel like it was because she was a white woman, in this white society that we have to deal with. They followed the whole trial. It was sensational news all the time. And, at the same time, my niece's trial was going on and nobody cared. That always stuck with me. And so I always, every chance I get, I say her name, Marlene Marie Bueno, 17 years old, went missing and found murdered, and so I started to think about things, looking around me, I started to see, where we were at in our community. And, being in an urban setting was a little different than being on tribal lands, but we were shoved aside as a community, as a family and a community, we were shoved aside, and back then I was determined to change things. I didn't know why or how that would happen, but I knew things had to change.
Thank you, Kelly. Marissa Perez, an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux tribe and has been involved in sexual assault and anti-trafficking awareness, prevention, and advocacy for over 7 years. In 2017, she founded the Yarrow Project, a program designed to assist Native victims of sexual exploitation in accessing Native cultural and spiritual healing practices. She is the program manager for the Cedar Rising Coalition, a coalition of Native-led organizations in King County, dedicated to ending all forms of gender-based violence in Native communities. And as was the case with Kelly, this is just the tip of the iceberg of the work that Marissa engages in and with. So if you don't mind chiming in and telling us a little bit more about you and the work you do, Marissa.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. It is absolutely an honor to be on this panel. I am humbled and just a little overwhelmed by the wealth of knowledge that I'm surrounded by in this virtual space. As Rosanna said, I have been doing this work in various settings for a long time. I was a sexual harassment and assault victim advocate in the U.S. Army for several years. and saw firsthand just how devastating this type of violence was, not only to the woman, but to her family and to her community. It just tears at the very fabric of who we were as a community. And then when I moved into the civilian world and found that it was happening to my own people, I really felt this call to do everything in my power to prevent this from being an issue that my nieces and nephews face. I have 2 younger sisters and many nieces, more being born every day, it seems like. And I don't want any of them to face what my grandmother and my aunts and my cousins and I have faced. So I found myself looking for ways to get involved, and fortunately was taken into the wings, under the wings of several amazingly powerful women here in the Seattle area, who not only allowed me the space to find out how to turn around and heal my community, but have also allowed me to find the space to heal myself. As a boarding school descendant, I'm very disconnected from my culture. That violence was of genocide. It took my language, it took it took dance, it took everything from me and my brothers and sisters. And so my own personal healing journey has mirrored that of the way I'm working to heal others. And it's been a very powerful few years, but it's been an absolute honor to walk this path and to do what I can to prevent this violence in any future communities across Turtle Island. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next, we have Trish Martinez, who is from the Mesa Grande Band of Mission Indians in San Diego County here in California. As a Native American, she is considered a trailblazer both within tribal communities and beyond. She serves as her tribal Indian Child Welfare Act representative and was a court-appointed special advocate for Native children and survivors of human trafficking in the foster care system. In this capacity, she was appointed as Native Liaison to the San Diego Human Trafficking Advisory Council. And again, that's barely a glimpse into all of the work and activism that Trish Martinez engages in out in the community. So Trish, I welcome you into the space once again. And if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit more about yourself and your work.
Thank you. Well, what brought me here is that I received a notice at work in regards to human trafficking, and it was an after hours event. And the first thing in my mind was like, okay, I'm going to give up some time after work. And what am I going to hear about Singapore or China or Thailand? Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know what was happening right in my city, my county, because we're one of the 13 top cities of the FBI list. And I don't take everything on face value. I took it back, the information, and I researched it, and I'll be darned, it was that bad. So then I started to dive into Native country because no statistics, no information, no reporting was ever done on even one Native. So I started to attend several different events across the country, and I made very wonderful contacts, and Marissa is one that's here. And when I came back, yes, I was given that, I don't want to say title, but that honor to be the Native Liaison to the council and bridge that conversation from Native to non-Native government to government. And so that's basically what brought myself to the table. There was no invite. There was no, oh, because of your position, we have to bring ourselves to the table. We have to make that introduction, and we have to humble ourselves also in that. Then I started to look at the youth and social media because my background is in telecommunications, logistics, and finance. And it started to worry me because of the suicide rates being so high. And so there's so many reasons behind our youth suicide rates and the dangers of social media that are so innocent looking on the forefront, but you really have to look at it from a different perspective to understand it. And then as I build presentations and I give those to Native country across this country, it brought home my own missing and murdered Indigenous person to our family. And it was a cousin of mine who we deem as intimate partner violence. And that's so easy to roll off the tongue. But that violence, that victim, that client is a person, and she meant something to somebody in our family. And to so easily say it was intimate partner violence and he killed her through a crime of passion, and her death came from a gunshot to her eye. And there's nothing of justice for her. And as the other young lady was saying, where's the justice? Where's the investigation? Where do we go to heal? And our healing looks so much different. So there's so many facets to my work, but a lot of it is in awareness and education, and really trying to change the perspective, not only from us as Native, but those of non-Natives that are stepping up to try to assist us. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish. Next up, we have Edith Williams, who was born and raised in South Sacramento. She grew up seeing a great deal of inequities and violence in both communities. From her early years, she was instilled with Indigenous ceremonial practices, including songs of the Northern California tribes. She joined Brown Issues in high school and became determined to learn how to affect change and use every platform to bring awareness to the issues that strike home, such as the issue we're here to talk about today, missing and murdered Indigenous women. Edith, would you mind sharing a little bit more about you and your work?
Yes, so hello everybody again. My name is Edith. I started doing this work last year, so January of 2019, because of an organization I'm with right now, Brown Issues. They've helped me expand my voice rather than to silence it, and it's completely amazing. The reason why I started getting into this was because of my cousin Khadijah. She was missing from the Round Valley tribes, and she went missing on February 8th, 2018, excuse me. And it stuck to me, my family, we never spoke about what happened to my cousins when I was growing up. And so when I started asking questions around and asking my aunties and my cousins, what happened to your sister? What happened to your auntie? What happened to grandma? And they always told me, you're too young to understand. And so I grew up not knowing the difference between what happened to them. And so when I started asking more questions around my 16 and 17-year-old self, they told me the truth, and it really hit home. So that's when I started looking into a lot more cases around my family. And so I lost my cousin Gracie from suicide when I was a kid, and I didn't know. I know a lot of family members and, communities of Nicole Smith from the Point Arena Rancheria. And, she got murdered, and we still can't find her murderer. And Khadijah, we really missed Khadijah. And so when I speak about this, it's a part of my heart that I'm speaking about, because without them, my life would be different. My life would be a little happy family. So I really wanted to speak about this, and going through violence within my lifetime. South Sacramento isn't the best place that everyone knows as. We have the recognition of South Sac, Iraq, and it's known because we've had a lot of gun shootings around our schools and around our neighborhoods. And so me speaking about this is just one of the little issues that I usually speak about. So thank you for inviting me, and thank you for everyone who's joined in.
Thank you, Edith. So, as we can tell from everyone's stories here, the work that you engage with is deeply personal, and it's also political, and it's systemic, and we're looking for answers within our own communities. If y'all wouldn't mind speaking on just the landscape of MMIW as an effort, as a movement, as advocates and voices in those spaces. We have a range of folks listening in and watching this webinar who might not have a lay of the land in terms of what MMIW represents. And we know that it's layered, right? It's systemic, it's personal, it's political, and each of you has a piece of the greater puzzle of at least starting to ask the right questions around the issue so that it doesn't continue to be underrepresented in spaces that will lead to change, right? So to put it more succinctly, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more the lay of the land in terms of MMIW and how you engage in that work, and just kind of giving us a glimpse into what are the issues that we can tease out from that, because it's more than just a phrase, right? And I'll leave it open to anyone who wants to unmute themselves to tackle that question first.
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. I think part of it for me is, you know, this is nothing new to us, right? We know all this. We've read about it. We've heard about it on the news. You know, we can look at the statistics, the numbers, you know, the patterns and all that stuff, but statistics don't solve problems, you know. Patterns and all that stuff, that's not our way. You know, that's not our way to heal and to stop this violence. You know, this is horrible what our women are going through. Our women, our children, our men, you know, it's a legacy of violence against us, you know, and to me, it's time to change that. You know, I don't know, you know, we have tried the other ways. I'm sure all of us here on this panel have tried other ways to find solutions to this, you know, issue, whatever you want to call it. It's an epidemic, a pandemic, whatever you want to call it. You know, it's been going on. You know, we've collected the statistics, we've collected the information, we've done all these things, but now it's time to take things back and do it our way. You know, whatever that means to you, you know, the healing has to start with us. We have to heal our men. We have to heal our women, our children. But the outside issue is it's usually not our people doing it to our people. You know, we have been kicked to the curb so many times, so many generations back. You know, we've been considered, you know, inconsequential as a whole, as a people. And it's time to change that. You know, it's time to, you know, I'm so glad to hear Edith. Thank you so much for being part of this, because I love hearing the youth come and step up. I love hearing them say things, you know, and I love hearing the fight in her voice. Thank you, Edith. You know, I'm old. I'm 60 years old, and I've been seeing this for a long time. And it's time to do things differently. You know, there's so much out there right now. There's so much violence against people of color. You know, the lay of the land is tremendous. You know, if you looked at it, you know, like looking at it geographically, for lack of a better term, you know, there's hills and valleys and peaks and, you know, rugged terrain and smooth and water. It's just all over the place. You know, being an urban Indian, you know, I consider myself urban. I was born here in the city of San Jose. It's different for us, but it's the same. The pain is the same, definitely. You know, trying to figure out a fix for this, it's going to take a long time, but we can't, you know, we've never given up on anything else, you know, and this violence, you know, this legacy of violence against us is nothing new. I said that already, but it's an incursion of violence onto our most sacred, ourselves, our people, you know, we red people, we people of color. And then, so that makes it, you know, a legacy of violence onto our land, our mother, the earth. You know, my thing has always been to find ways to save our mother, the earth. You know, that's all the legacy that I have to leave my children and grandchildren. I don't have money, you know, I barely have gas in my car these days, but the legacy that I want to leave behind is to heal the earth, our mother, the earth. And that's not just us people, us red people. You know, we have to teach. I heard one time, I used to know John Lamedeer and Archie Fire Lamedeer, and they taught me some stuff about saving the earth and how it's the red people's responsibility to teach the non-red people how to save the earth, how to walk right on this planet. You know, and I thought, wow, that's really lofty goals, you know, back then, but I get it now. You know, we have to come together as a people. You know, and we have to leave our differences aside. You know, we all pray a little differently. You know, I think we put that match to the sage the same way, though. You know, we send the smoke up the same way. Maybe the words are different. Maybe the prayers are a little different, but it's all the same thing. The smoke only goes in one direction. It goes up. You know, it takes our prayers up. And that's one thing we all have in common. You know, but the earth is the legacy that we have to leave behind. You know, it started out small for me when I started to learn these things, I don't know, 40, 50 years ago, geez. It started out by simple things, you know, not wanting to throw trash on the ground, but now it's escalated to wanting to save the people and not throw them on the ground. You know, it's just so huge to me, but, you know, we have to really, we have a lot to overcome, but we've done it before. You know, anybody jump in any minute.
Right. Give me a quick second to interject right now, just because I think when we're actively a part of this work and the conversation, that it just is the reality of what we're faced with, right? And it can also, just to remind folks who are tuning in on the webinar, that all trigger warnings apply here. I mean, this is a hefty topic we're talking about, and there are things that are deeply personal and political and triggering left and right. And some of us live in the world targeted left and right. So we're always kind of on trigger, and we take for granted that we know how to navigate those conversations that are difficult topics because we have no other choice. But as a courtesy to the folks who are tuning into the webinar, do know that MMIW, it should be implied in the title, it is not going to be a completely happy conversation, but there are indeed some bright spots with regard to the activism and the work that these women are sharing in the webinar space today. But Callie, thank you so much. Anyone want to chime into that? Again, the landscape of MMIW, stories that shape your work, just the issues that we should probably be calling out in this space more intentionally.
This is Trish. I'd like to go next if I could. Building upon what she had just stated, the one thing that always comes to mind with me is we can no longer afford to remain silent. It's too high of a price that we're paying to remain silent. We're expecting justice. We're expecting a sentence. We're expecting that abuser or those traffickers, fill in the blank, to go to jail. But how do we expect that to happen if we ourselves, we need to create that safe space for our victims, our clients, our family, and ourselves to be able to give those investigators and those prosecutors the information to now take the case to court. And our children are too high of a price to pay for that. Right now, I'm working with a young lady who is very much involved in DV. And with her and the COVID-19, she's finding it difficult for the victims to even call now because they don't believe the court is open. So I'm not going to get a restraining order, or no advocates are out there for my support. So we're not really doing a good job of getting that communication out there that there are still services for them. But then working with a DV or a client to remove them, or a victim to remove them from trafficking, where are you taking them? Where are your resources for safe housing, for advocates, for that wraparound? And you can't put them back in a hotel and toss them a key and expect them to help themselves. And how are you going to work with this client and victim when in our native homes, you're 2, 3, 8 families deep? And how do you expect to have that conversation with confidentiality? And don't even get me started with the definition of confidentiality in native country. We must do a better job on that. My work, a lot of it is in awareness and prevention. And with that, I'm working very closely with my ICWA representatives for my children right now, because now that they're at home, they're in the home, they no longer have that second, third, fourth set of eyes at school, or the bus driver, or the groundskeeper, or the lunch lady. And that worries me. So they are doing their best to make sure they have those home visits and watch those children and talk with them and look for signs. But she can only do as much as she can do, but she's doing her best. I'm also worried about the youth that we have in probation, because I've been in a couple of heated conversations around ICWA doesn't apply in probation. Yes, it does if that child is ICWA eligible. So we're looking at boys and girls and our two-spirited. And I hate the term when people talk about our throwaway children. We do not throw away our children, but if they had to run away from something so bad, let's start dialing it back and seeing what was going on. Because we not only need to heal our children, we need to heal the adults, we need to heal the men and the women. And that's why I always like to have events and conversation around MMIP. We need to include the boys. We need to include the men. They were hurt also. And you talk about not having a safe space or being shamed if they spoke about what happened to them. That is what needs to be done to now unravel and heal from the earth up, as was being said. So again, my work is in prevention. A lot of it is in social media. And if our children or our young adults are looking for a friend or just that little bit of conversation, and you're not giving it to them, they're going to get it somewhere else. And they're going to be sold that dream, and they are gone. They are gone. And that's what totally, totally scares me. So we need to start talking about coping skills. We need to allow men and women, boys and girls, to be heard and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. When you ask the question or you're hearing something, give the person the space to talk, because they may be going back in years and answering you in that child's voice, in that child's mind, because that's where the trauma was. And I can't say it more than enough. We need to support each other in this. Thank you.
Thank you. It's definitely a community effort, and community accountability does apply. Edith or Marissa, did you want to add anything to the conversation so far?
Yeah, so when I think about MMIP, I want to echo a couple of things. One, people ask all the time, well, why is it that Native men and women, and women and girls especially, are so vulnerable, right? Or so at risk? Why are the rates so high of violence? And some of those facts we know are I can speak for Washington State, based on very, very limited, incomplete data here in Washington State that was compiled by the Washington State Patrol last year, and then analyzed by the Urban Indian Health Institute. I, as a Native woman, are 4 times as likely to go missing or be murdered in the state of Washington, just because I'm Native. The reasons are not because we are promiscuous, or we're all drug addicts, or we're all alcoholics. We are not vulnerable. We are targeted. We are targeted because there's been a sense in this country for 600 years that Native women, nobody cares what happens to us, right? We are easy prey. We are, if you can go onto a reservation and do whatever you want and get away with it because of jurisdictional issues. Here and that attitude has translated to here in the urban centers, where there is no jurisdictional tangle around. If I were to something were to happen to me, there'd be no jurisdictional issue. King County would have jurisdiction, or if it was depending on what type of crime it was, the city of Burien, right? It's very simple. So why is it that we are still going missing and being murdered in our urban centers when the jurisdictional thing it's not an excuse, right? It's because we are targeted. It does not matter if we are a foster child, or a college graduate, or a millionaire, or it does not matter what our circumstances are. We are equally at risk because we are targeted. So having that conversation and removing the language of vulnerability, which puts it back on us to take it. If you're vulnerable, then change your lifestyle, right? What were you wearing? Why were you drinking? Why were you out so late? It's not on the victim to change her behavior to make her less of a target. It's on the community to protect her by prosecuting and preventing that victimization from happening in the first place, right? 96, anywhere from, depending on where you look, anywhere from 80 to 90 or 89 to 96% of violence against Native women is perpetrated by non-native men. We are the only demographic where there is that type of racial inequality. The vast majority of sexual violence done against African-American women is done by African-American men, white on white, Asian on Asian. We are the only ones where the vast majority, upwards around 90% of the violence perpetrated against us is done by non-native people. We're walking around with a giant target on our back simply because the attitude in this country are that we are the invisible minority, right? We are the ones that nobody cares about. We are the throwaway people. All the way back to Columbus, we are the throwaway people. We are a commodity. We are something to be traded, bought, and sold. Every single fort across the entire country had a brothel right outside that fort. Do you think that they shipped white women from Europe to staff those brothels? No, those brothels were staffed were filled with brown and black women. They were filled with indigenous women and slaves as that started. But especially in this region, they were all of those brothels were staffed by Native women. I say staffed, filled by Native women who were not there voluntarily. So the trafficking and the targeting of our people has been happening since time immemorial. And well, not since time immemorial, since the Europeans got here in 1492. So that's what I think about when I think about MMIP. I think that it is, it's something that we need to change our language around. We need to stop putting it back on the victim. We need to stop having this conversation about vulnerabilities and start having this conversation about targeting. We need to, as Trish said, start healing our own communities and ensure that we are not doing it to ourselves, because we're already facing so much of it from the world around us. We don't need to be facing it internally as well. So starting those healing conversations internally to our communities, and then raising awareness so that we are no longer the forgotten, invisible minority. We're no longer the ones that nobody cares about, because that's not the case. I have a lot of people who care about me, right? Khadijah had a lot of people that cared about her. Marlene had a lot of people that cared about her. We are not invisible. And we are told that over and over again by all of these messages that come from the media and come from society. And like Trish said, we don't get to be silent anymore. I don't get to just go to bed every night and know that this is happening and not do everything I can to stop it. And thank God Edith is leading the charge for the youth in her community and being a part of that, because it might take a couple more generations, and we're in it for the long haul. So that's what I think about when I think about MMIW. So thank you.
Thank you. Definitely calling out a lot of those hard to swallow truths of facts, right? These are the facts of the current landscape that have been misrepresented, intentionally misrepresented, and then kind of institutionalized in large degree. Edith, would you mind sharing a little bit more about, where you are in this work, and just a little bit more about the landscape of MMIW and MMIP?
Yeah. So everything I'm going to say right now is words of love, and it's not to hurt any race or anything towards anything, but I feel our country needs to get woke for the issues that are going on in our communities. We want to talk about all the minorities that have all these issues. We can't forget about our Asian, our Pacific Islanders. We can't forget about any of our communities, because, growing up, I saw those violence in those communities, and I was like, okay, well, let me look into mine. And I seen that our numbers were just so high. I just could not know, how is this being ignored? And I was just talking to my mom about this a few days ago, because she helps me with a lot of this work, and I want to thank my mom for everything she does. My mom, she grew up in the same neighborhood. I'm living in my grandparents' home, where they lived here for generations. And I want to say that because my great grandma, I was named after her. She came from the boarding schools from Nevada, and I think that was very powerful for her to come and migrate to Sacramento. And she had to go through a lot, and I wanted to say that because, you know, that's a part of my story that I need to tell. But when it comes to the missing and murdered Indigenous women and people, we have so many problems in our communities that we can't only specify in that. And so when I think of that, I think about the problems we have in our educational system that no one speaks about the rapes that we have, you know, the PTSD that we have. We are higher than any other race. And I want to speak that. And I want to make sure everyone's woke about it, because if we don't speak about it, it's going to be quiet. And I know a lot of my Indigenous people, we're silenced. We don't have nothing. And I only say that is because when I see Khadijah or Nicole Smith, I never saw anything really about them. I did not see them on television. I didn't see them like that. I seen it like 15 minutes, that's it. And, you know, it just breaks my heart knowing that my people can go missing without a word, and no one will say anything about it. And I just want to acknowledge, you know, that in the educational system in California, that California Indigenous people, we only make up 12% of the population from the 2010 census. But when it comes to the education, we are one of the highest, which is 7.2 for us, to be expelled or suspended by the end of our high school career. You know, that's a high number when we're only 12% of the population. So when I think of all of this work, I think about caring for my family and knowing when is the last day they're going to see me. And that's one question I wake up every morning is, I hope this isn't my last day on earth, because I have so much more. And it's sad that I, as a 19-year-old who lives in a city, I have to think of those questions in my mind when I wake up. I hope today isn't the last day. I pray every morning and every night in my sleep, during my day. Every day for me is a ceremony. And for me to speak about this, it's more of acknowledging that we are here for a reason. And what we're doing right now, doing this webinar, it's beyond powerful in my eyes. And I just want to cry because it fills my heart of joy about all the things that we've been through and the resilience we keep in our system. You know, even though we got colonized, you know, we are living in a ceremony, and it just breaks my heart knowing the fact that some people will take that ceremony away from us, and from our families, and hurt us.
Thank you, Edith. And on that note of resilience, right? It's resilience from a space of more than survival, a resilience in a way that isn't just resilience because you're forced to be resilient, which is different, right? It's that resilience from a space of agency. So that brings me to my next question. We've got two that I'm going to roll into one, so humor me here, because they do interconnect and interrelate, and I want to make sure that you each get to speak on that. But what collaborative efforts are working well in your counties or communities with regard to Native communities and MMIP, MMIW? Are there programs, educational opportunities that you see addressing this issue effectively? And what type of services or assistance do you see in place that currently help Indigenous women in need?
Okay, I'll go first again.
Thank you.
Here in San Jose, you know, of course, there's the Office on Women's Policies. And, you know, Quetzal and all the ladies there, Renee, they all do such fabulous work, you know. They work hard and, you know, they're just there for us. And that's huge for me. I didn't even know that this agency existed until a couple years ago. You know, and I see now, you know, working with the Red Earth Women's Society, being part of that, it's been opening a lot of doors. The other, you know, that's one place that's one agency we have a healthy collaboration with. We also collaborate with the the boots on the ground agencies, you know, Conexión to Community, Indian Health Center, you know, all the anybody who's available and who will listen to me for 5 minutes, I do my best to collaborate with them. You know, it is something, you know, I think one thing that I'm hearing is that, you know, we have to start talking about this stuff in a different way. But the collaborations are key. You know, we went up to the state level last year and that was huge. You know, it was different. It was something we hadn't even thought about. We started out thinking about doing an educational opportunity, which was the red dress display in the county offices. And it just turned into this huge thing, and it was great. You know, the women put in some really hard work. You know, we put up that red dress display. It opened a lot of eyes, brought a lot of other people into our circle. And that was really cool because it allowed us to collaborate on an even broader scale. Working with the assemblymen has been great. Ash and Assemblymember Ramos, you know, were very instrumental in helping us get May. I'm sorry, I'm losing my phone here. They were very instrumental in us getting May identified as Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Month. I think collaboration is the key because, you know, we can work within our own community so much, but after a while, you know, we beat all the paths smooth, and we have to start expanding those paths and start thinking a little differently. You know, talking about, you know, I appreciate what people said about being targeted. Marissa, thank you for bringing that up. You know, we are targeted because of the color of our skin, you know, because of the anti-Indianism, the influences of settler colonialism, all that stuff, you know, affects what we do. And, you know, we need to change that. So it's time to re-educate not just our own communities, not just our own families, because I get the feeling that we're all really good at that, you know, but we have to now step outside of our little comfort zone and start educating the other people around us. You know, we have to start creating those circles bigger and bigger. We have to make them bigger and bigger. You know, we have to put into action that ripple effect. You know, we have to be that drop in the bucket to create those waves that expand out. And of course, you know, collaborations are always the key to this, but, and we don't give up. We can't give up. We've never given up as a people, you know, red people, people of color. We're still here after all. How many, you know, different ethnicities, you know, people of color have been, you know, tried to be under the thumb of that settler colonialism, you know, and we're still here. They can't get rid of us, and they won't get rid of us. There's so many things that we do need to talk about, though, in those collaborations. You know, we need to make other people aware of exactly what's going on with us. You know, Native people as a whole across the nation are more likely to be killed by police officers than any other minority group in the nation. We're number one in child poverty. We rank 49th in education, and over 40% of our Native youth live in poverty here. You know, that's crazy. And those are probably old numbers. You know, the thing is this, we have to be we have to be the person to throw that pebble in the pond, right? We have to put in motion that ripple effect. We have to step out there and say, this is who I am. This is who we are. You can't make us go away, but we need to make you listen, you know, in a good way. We have to find it. You know, sometimes, you know, I'm old, I'm 60 years old. So my activism has really fine-tuned in my old age. You know, I don't run and get a stick and put up a sign and go stomp around in front of people anymore. I like to every now and then, you know, I like to be active in my community. I like to stand up for what's right. But now I've learned how to choose my words and use my words carefully. And I find that now, actually, I think this new generation are a little more willing to listen. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that they're willing to learn and listen from us. And I really appreciate the fact that they're ready to take that banner out and go out there and wave it in your face. You know, the thing is we have to overcome this again. You know, here we are again, but it's just that, you know, it's that colonialism, that settler colonialism mentality. It's, you know, all those things that we have historically had to overcome, and we do. We keep on doing it, you know, but we have to really think about what we do next. But it's something that we cannot stop talking about. You know, I hated even throwing those little statistics out right now, because I used to be really big on numbers and statistics, but I found out that statistics and numbers don't solve anything. They do raise awareness though, so they are good to know, but we're so underrepresented across the board that those statistics are probably, I don't know how many years old, you know, but if you do a search, that's what you find. You know, we need to do our own statistics. We need to be real about how many people are missing and murdered. You know, how many women, how many children, how many men, how many boys. You know, we need to somehow find a way to bring that together and be real, so that the other people in the world can see our truth, you know, and they can see that we are not inconsequential anymore. We are not those throwaway people. You know, we do exist and we are here. We're not invisible anymore. That's the thing, is we cannot choose invisibility anymore. We have to stand up and talk about it and shout about it, you know, from Canada down to the border. You know, the systemic violence being perpetrated upon us, people of color. The only way to stop it is to stand up to it. And I don't mean stocking people up or nothing, even though I feel like that sometimes. I mean, you know, choosing our words, our education, and just being present, and also being willing to talk about what happened to us. I used to not be able to talk about my niece, Marlene, because it always still right now brings a lump to my throat, tears to my eyes, and pain to my heart. But she's so important. You know, she's the person who propelled me forward on this path. You know, her death will not be in vain. And that's how we have to think about all of them. You know, all of the people that are missing, all of the people that turn up murdered or trafficked, abused, you know, we have to make that not in vain. You know, they have value to us. They have value to the whole world, not just people of color, you know. So we need to just start to step up again. We're doing a good job, I think, as a whole. You know, Archie and John Lamder told me something a long time ago. They told me that when I came home, because I was in a different place back then, but when I came home, that I would need to really stand up and sing out loud. And I thought, oh, wow, what does that mean? You know, and Archie told me, you know, when you go home, you have to find yourself. You have to go back to being who you really are, you know. And I thought, oh, great, I have to go find myself. What kind of crap is that? You know, but he was right. He was right. You know, I had to just be true to myself, which is a hard thing to do. Not anymore at my age, but I know a lot of kids, a lot of even younger adults, you know, it's hard for them just to be Indigenous, just to be Native and to be true to who they are, because especially out here in the urban areas, you know, we're survivors, so we fit in. You know, we hang out with people who look like us, who talk like us and walk like us out here in the city. And that's not always the same as us, you know, but it's okay. It's okay, because we are all people of color and we all came from somewhere. We're all Indigenous to somewhere, you know, even the non-Native people. And I used to have a hard time admitting that, but they're Indigenous to somewhere too, you know, and I'm sure that wherever they came from, that dang, you know, oppression and all those things happened to them in some way, somehow, some way. After all, that's why they came here to this land, right? They're fleeing from oppression. And unfortunately, they got it really twisted. But, you know, we do need to think about, I don't know, we need to think about who we are again, and we need to say it out loud. You know, we need our kids to say it out loud. You know, we need our children, our grandchildren to say, you know, we're not invisible. We're here and we're not going away. And this violence is going to stop, you know. And I think it was you, Marissa, who said it might be another generation or two, but we can do it. You know, we can do it. We've overcome so much as a nation. You know, people of color, we are not going away, and we can do it. You know, we have to, you know, there's been so many steps that have been taken to try to put an end to the violence. You know, states have enacted task force and finance studies and created six-figure salaries for investigative reports, and all those things have already happened, and here we are. I'm still crying over Marlene Marie Bueno, that beautiful little girl who lost her life in such a horrible way, and all those things, the task force, the money, the salaries, the investigations, they're not taking away my pain. The only thing that takes away my pain is ceremony and being comforted by people like me, who look like me and act like me. Well, I don't think anybody acts like me, but you know what I mean, but it's a long road. It's a long road, and here we are.
Thank you, Kelly. A few things that you touched on were that just solidarity, that sense of community, standing firm in your identity, establishing collective cultural pride, regardless of the spaces that you are in, because what it's like to live in San Jose might be different from what it is to live in more, what I like to say, less densely populated areas, and the way that we're able to access ceremony for the sake of moving issues outside of being issues and making them community, accountability, grounded approaches to addressing the issues that you all are working on here. I want to make sure that, the other panelists get a chance to speak their truths in this space también. So we have, back to the question, just so that we remember for now where we're at, and wherever your rumblings go, we'll trust it. The collaborative efforts that are working well in your county or in your community, the programs, the educational opportunities, and then layering on that just how or what services are available to Indigenous women in need or communities, right? Indigenous communities, to hopefully change some of this landscape.
Hi. So I say hi as if I haven't been here for over an hour. Yes, so I am extremely passionate about this question, so forgive me if I get a little hot. MMIW is not a movement that you get into if you want your name in lights, or you want your name on publications, or you want to be known as the mother of the movement or the leader of the movement. Yes, we've got mothers of the movement, and they are fantastic, and I've been honored to meet several of them, but that's not, nobody gets into it because they want their name in lights. And as such, these movements, these collaborations that we do together, they're never about one thing. They're never about one organization. They're never about one solution that's going to solve all things. When we developed the mission statement for the Cedar Rising Coalition, we specifically said it needs to be extremely broad. And if you look at it, it's people who read our mission statement like, well, you want to fix everything. Yeah, kind of. Because you can't just focus on domestic violence. You can't just focus on trafficking. You can't just focus on the child welfare system. You have to take it all together. There's so much intersectionality in the types, and what's called comorbidity in the types of violence. And some of it's systemic, right? Our child welfare system, are put into into foster care 4 times as likely as white children. If you control for everything else, 2 kids, same problems in the household, same everything. One is white and one is Native. That Native child will get taken out of the home and put into care 4 times as often as that white child. And we know for a fact that there's a direct link between foster care and prostitution and trafficking. So we know we have all of these women that are going into trafficking. We know that often those children that are put into foster care have experienced childhood sexual abuse, whether before or during foster care. So there's all of these comorbidities and all of these overlapping intersectional types of violence. And so when we're talking about coming to the table and trying to solve MMIW, we have to talk to experts in all of those different areas, right? We have to bring them all to the table. And first and foremost, we have to ensure that the families are at the table, because they're the ones that are going to tell us, yes, this is what would have worked. This is what is working. This is what's not working. They're the ones that by virtue of lived experience, they have the knowledge that we cannot do this work without. So if you're looking at your table of who you want in your community, who you want to try in your area to try to fix this issue, and there are no family members there, you need to take a step back and figure out why you're doing what you're doing. Because the families are the ones that are going to tell you, are going to be the forefront. They're going to be the ones that have, long after your job, you're on to your next job, you're on to your next mission, you're on to your next crusade, long after you've done your work, they are still walking this path because it's never going to go away. They unfortunately have to walk it for the rest of their lives. So ensure that families are at the forefront of that collaboration, and then ensure that you're bringing people from all different areas. We have folks that are doulas. They, the Ina Macaw program at the United Indians of All Tribes Foundation are one of our coalition members, and they work with early childhood. So they go into the homes and they can come back and tell us, these homes, they are raising their children in a good way, in an Indigenous way. They're imparting that respect and that that community and family oriented parenthood. They're doing it right. And so they come to us and they tell us that, yes, this is working, and ensuring that we're going into the homes and we're giving them the tools, we're giving them the skills to raise their children in a good way. Those children are going to grow up knowing who they are as Indigenous children. They're going to grow up walking in that good way, right? So that, it may look weird to have doulas at our table, but they play such an important role. And on the opposite end, we've got policymakers like Abigail Echohawk, who, you know, is a lead researcher. And then we have folks that are grassroots family members like Carolyn DeFord, who has had to walk this path for 20 years. And she unfortunately had to learn so much through her loss. And so being able to bring people from all walks and all parts of this movement to the table, there's not going to be a magic answer for every community. There's not going to be I can't send you a list of, you know, this is who to pull into your coalition. But I can tell you that if they have any, bring in law enforcement, right? We've got Washington State Patrol and King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, and they are there and they're active and they're part of it and they're doing the work and they're walking, they're humble, right? They're walking alongside us to solve this issue. So if you think that maybe they might have something to do with this issue of gender-based violence, go ahead and invite them. You never know where you're going to get those pieces of the puzzle that are really going to make a big difference. So I absolutely think that ensuring that this is a collaborative community movement, and that there is no one person that's key to the movement, but that you are all, everyone at that table has a voice and has a part to play in the solution, I think is going to be stone number one. Well, stone number two. Stone number one is ensuring that the families are there. Stone number two is ensuring that everyone is lifting together, right? We, my organization, Nahaili Fund, Yahau, right? They all lift together. It's not just one person lifting the tent pole up, it's everyone lifting together. And that's what it takes to do this work. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that particular question.
Thank you, Marissa. I'm hearing you echo some of what Kelly said, and then layering on a few other things about how community shows up and making space for communities to show up, right? And community being centered in family, and this process of almost remembering, right? Because I think oftentimes when you talk to folks who are not as aware culturally about certain communities, there's this tendency to come in and say, we're giving you all these tools. And what I'm hearing you say is you're giving families access to remember the tools that they've always had in this process. And that's beautiful in itself, in such a difficult landscape to navigate while you're being targeted. Edith or Trish, did you want to add anything to that part of the conversation?
Yes, I did. This is Trish. To build upon now what Marissa was saying, and for Kelly, I thank Kelly for using the word invisible. And so much so as the advisory council that I'm a part of here, we have different subcommittees. So bringing those persons to the table, as Marissa was saying, that is the structure in which we operate. We have the health committee, which encompasses medical, behavioral health, dental, because a victim or a client may come through a dentist's office and they need to know and be aware of the emergency rooms, prosecution, education, whether it be a city, county school, Indian school, parochial, Jewish, whatever. They all should be at the table under education. We do have the survivor's voice. So there is a subcommittee of only survivors because they know the best of what they need to have, and they bring that voice there. And then we also have community, which is one of the ones that I'm a part of, which goes out and does that education and just becomes a conduit between one to another and introduces people to the other. And research, data and research. We have 2 universities and folks stepping forward to get those grants for the research. And what do we need to find? None of that is for Native country as of yet. My heartburn with that is who's going to own the data if you're going to start doing the research on Native issues. You know, we need to really be responsive to that. And as Marissa said, law enforcement. We have a task force that is 1 or 2 officers of maybe cities, FBI, DOJ, Sheriff's Department. We also have immigration for Border Patrol, and we also have the IRS. We have someone there from the IRS to watch the monies and banking. So that's really important to have. So what my heartburn is sometimes is when law enforcement or someone comes in contact with one of our people, our relatives, what box do they check? Black, white, Pacific Islander, other? Do they ask the right questions? You know, and here is where we need to teach our children, you are Native. I don't go by percentage, I don't go by half of this or that, but you are Native, that's what you need to speak upon. Or is it left to that advocate, that social worker, that law enforcement officer to say they appear to be X, Y, or Z? So a lot of our victims and clients are misrepresented. So also when we talk about being Indigenous to somewhere, my heart went right back because I sit in San Diego to all those children and family members, our relatives of the Indigenous south of the border that are still in cages. What are we doing about our relatives, our Indigenous relatives that are still in cages, and those babies that were sent out all across the country? And we saw those buses, we saw those planes leave different hubs late at night, 11, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I watched those live feeds and those children gone. What are we doing about that? No one's speaking. So when we want to talk about that, when Edith was talking, it hurt my heart to hear her say that every day she's thankful for another day, and is this going to be the day? I don't ever want anybody, child or adult, to ever have to live with that type of mindset, because my grandma and my grandpa and others before them and my relatives to me, they survive for a purpose, and I'm that purpose. We're that purpose. Those children in cages or in ICWA or sitting at home or making that noise, all those noises in our homes, they're here for a purpose, you know? And when we think about, we lost a little girl who's 7 or someone who's 5 and etc. You lost an engineer. You lost someone who could have found a cure for cancer. You lost a doctor, a specialist. You just didn't lose a child. You lost that child's legacy. So when I think of education and awareness for these kids, they have no idea the potential that's in them. We have no idea what they could be doing. Look at Edith today, sitting here talking, and I want to give her the mic so much more and let her talk what she's doing, but to every child. And Marissa, as she said, have the families there to give their input and their lived experience and their voice, but also have the children there. If you're going to have a program, make up a system, change a law, write a policy, ask the children what they need. And again, become comfortable with being uncomfortable because you ask the question and let them articulate their answer. Bring them to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish. Edith, I want to make sure that you have space to voice that. I know you carry the role in this particular space of speaking for that generation, right, of youth and youth voices, and that's a large group. It's the children, but it's also, you know, folks who are transitioning from being a child in the world into being a full-fledged adult, and you're kind of in that in-between space. And so if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit on your efforts. And as a reminder to everyone else, we're rolling up on the time here. So I have one final question after this that's a little bit more brief. But Edith, take it away.
Yeah, so thank you. And I wanted to really speak about this because it's unity that we need. We need to bring a round table and let everybody know and speak of all our details and all our history coming together now, because this is history we are making. And I just wanted to say that with unity, because if our communities are going against each other, there is no reason why we should be doing this. And so, I grew up with communities against each other, and now we're starting to get to love each other. And that's what I love, is when we love each other and not hate on each other, and we empower each other. And so that's what I wanted to speak about, because with going on that, let's talk about the South Dakota pipeline. 141 people were arrested and were gassed. We had the whole slate. We were gassed, we were watered, we had almost everything wrong. And that's the only way we got the media attention, was through the negativity. And when I looked online, I saw so much positivity networks letting everyone know, like, we support this. And, they shot those water, like the hose waters, at these people, at these youth, adults, little children, when it was nearly 23 degrees at night. So they were freezing, and that shows how solidarity and the unity that we can keep within each other. And it's just it's so big. But within my community in Sacramento, we have the Sacramento Native American Health Center that helps a lot. A lot of my family, they work there. Northern Valley, from Yolo County, so that's in Woodland, with my uncle Mike Duncan, and that's been a big thing for me, because one of my cousins, she was going through a DV, and she left it, and we're still going through the process. I'm here for her 24/7, and she's by my side. And when I say that, I mean, it's hard for us as youth, growing up into the adulthood, where we normalize what we shouldn't normalize. And it just breaks my heart if we don't love each other and we're against each other. Where's the problems we have to fix come together? And so that's one of my big parts. Yeah.
Thank you, Edith. And we are coming up really close to the final time, and I just want to make sure that folks know how to either access or communicate, reach out to you or the organizations you represent to seek out services and resources, and to provide supports, right? How can folks also support the work that you're doing?
So I guess I'll go first. So for one of the things that me and a few other people are doing in my college is my friend Tanya, she's actually doing a Res Love project. And so she's from Sacramento too, and she's going to drive all the way to Arizona. And she just needs help transporting herself there and back, So if you go on the GoFundMe, it's called the Res Love Project. And so that's something that she's really big about, and I want to support her through anyway. But if you want to get in contact with me on Instagram, my name is at Indigenous Edith _, and you can always email me at itzedith@outlook.com.
This is Trish. I'm going to add my email address here in the comments on the live feed, so everybody will have it.
Perfect. And I believe if you if you've currently followed the Santa Clara County Office of Women's Policy Facebook page, it's my understanding that they're also going to follow up with compiled resources where you can find out more and link to each of the organizations that were mentioned throughout.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I just put my my email, and we have the Facebook page Cedar Rising Coalition on Facebook, and you can reach me through there. and see what we're up to. We right now are working on a couple of really cool projects, one of them being a period product drive. Often women, due to COVID, there's been a great increase in domestic violence. And so we are partnering with our both mainstream and Native organizations to ensure that period products are available to anyone who needs them, because they can be expensive and sometimes embarrassing to ask for. So check that out on our Facebook, and then my email is going to be in the chat as well.
Yeah, the Red Earth Women's Society, we do have a Facebook page if anybody wants to contact us. But one thing I did want to mention was we are collaborating with the Dolores Huerta Foundation in the Central Valley. We're definitely addressing the issue of the children on the border and the children that are being stolen and taken away from their families. And anyways, we were doing a medicine call. This is actually in lieu of the event that we had planned with their foundation. We were going to do a prayer walk out there, and as soon as we're able to, we're going to get out there and do a prayer walk or something for the kids out there. There's too many children, here we go again, being ripped away from their families, basically being stolen, and who knows where they're ending up. I know the United States government is so unaccountable for these children that are being taken away. They can't even find some, they're saying they're going to do DNA and all this stuff. And I don't know how, because there's no DNA to match them to find these children. But that's one thing that we have coming up. And if you go to our Facebook page and follow us, you'll see that, all the other things that we're trying to put out there to the community to bring awareness to, in any aspect, any shape or form that we're able to. That's what we're about.
Thank you so much. And folks, it looks like we're rolling up on the clock here. So to close this conversation up, it's the beginning of a conversation for some of you, right? And for some of you, it's reinforcement toward the movement that you're already a part of. And I encourage all of us to continue to educate ourselves and be active in this movement and reach out, whether it be to access support or provide supports or both. A special thank you to the Office of Women's Policy and the Red Earth Women's Society, and a special thank you to Cecilia, aka Renee, and Quetzal for putting this together and totally bringing beautiful, brilliant voices for us to learn from and hear from in this space. And for the panelists who took the time to sweat it with us here in this virtual space, it's a hot day wherever you're at. Thank you for sharing some of yourselves and your heart and your sweat and tears with the work that you do, and for giving us a glimpse into that commitment you have for the community, and to invite us to think about this issue in that intersectional way so that we can act in solidarity and in truth, right, for these issues, so that they are seen as what they need to be. It's about people, and it's about action, and it's about making sure that folks can live with full dignity and not have to navigate this landscape of terror and fear, quite frankly. And so again, I thank you all for your truth in this space, and I look forward to seeing how folks are engaging with this information moving forward. The Office of Women's Policy will post this along with resources that were listed here. And, it's one of these webinars where y'all tackled some difficult conversations, necessary conversations. And in terms of the difficulties of the topics we heard here, the reality of navigating that reality is much more intense than even the words could do it justice by, right? So it's one of those webinars where I'm like, we need to close it up, but the conversation needs to continue, which is why I'm hesitating to give it that sense of finality in my voice and words, because it just doesn't feel right to close it off and the acknowledgement that this is a prevalent issue, and it is, just as I think it was Callie called it, or Trish called it, a pandemic and an epidemic, for sure, on top of the one that we're currently navigating. So we do have to end it. And I will say, finally, with a sense of finality, thank you all for your time. Thank you all for your heart and the hustle that you put behind this work. Please do continue to educate yourselves and activate your communities. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Rosanna. Good job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.